Hello and welcome to the Gig House Kitchen, where today I'll be making these mouth-watering brown butter millionaire's shortbreads. Highly impressive and a lot easier to pull off than you'd think. So, if you want to look like an absolute baller in your kitchen, I suggest you give this recipe a try. So, let's get down to it. As always, we'll start with the ingredients. For the shortbread, you'll need 300 grams of plain flour, 250 grams of butter, you can use salted or unsalted, and 100 grams of caster sugar. For the caramel, you'll need 150 grams of butter, 150 grams of soft brown sugar, and one 397ml tin of condensed milk. Finally, for the topping, you'll need a 150 gram bar of dark or semi-sweet chocolate, and a neutral cooking oil. Here I'm just using sunflower oil. I'll also be using vanilla extract and salt. First, we'll make our brown butter shortbread. So let's get started browning some butter. Here I've got a heavy saucepan and I'm dropping in 250 grams of slightly softened butter, which I've cubed for easier melting. I got a great tip from Sally's Baking Addiction about using a light coloured pan when browning butter. Butter goes from brown to burnt in a matter of seconds, so this is a great way of keeping track of how it's getting on. Shout out to Sally for that one. So you'll want to melt your butter on a low heat until it starts to boil and foam, like you see here. This is just the water boiling off. After a while you'll see the milk solids separate and what we call clarified butter will be on the surface. It's the milk solids you'll see gradually get more golden. Keep cooking on that gentle heat, always stirring to avoid the butter scorching, and eventually you'll get this thick foam covering the surface. This is go time, so keep on top of it because this is around the time that your butter will become browned. As soon as it's browned, carefully pour the butter into a heat-proof bowl to stop the cooking process, otherwise it may burn from the residual heat in the pan. You'll then want to leave your browned butter to cool down and re-solidify before you make the shortbread. As you'll see here, my butter is now cooled. I stirred it during the process to keep the layers combined together, which is why I have this nice golden blob here. This is a variation of the 3-2-1 recipe my mum demonstrated in our checkerboard biscuits tutorial, which I'll link for you. First I add some vanilla extract, then I add in 100 grams of caster sugar, followed by 300 grams of plain flour and a teaspoon of salt, which I stir with a wooden spoon. Since I browned the butter, I needed to increase the volume slightly because we will have lost some of it through cooking, which is why I started with 250 grams. However, for a regular shortbread, I would only use 200 grams for this weight of flour. So we have the proportions 300 grams, 200 grams and 100 grams, or 3-2-1. Once our shortbread mixture resembles damp sand, I pour it into my baking dish, which I've lined with baking parchment. The shortbread won't actually stick to your dish, but it makes it easier to remove them after cooking if you line the dish. I gently press the shortbread mixture into the dish to even it out and slightly compact it. Some recipes will tell you to really press the mixture down, but I don't think this is necessary and can result in a very dense biscuit. Once my shortbread mixture is smooth and even, I bake it at 180 degrees centigrade, which is 356 degrees Fahrenheit or gas mark 4, for between 15 and 20 minutes. I wanted my shortbreads to get nice and toasty to enhance the nutty flavour of our browned butter, but as long as it's lightly golden, it's done. Right, now that's done, let's move on to the caramel. This, by far, is one of the easiest caramel recipes you can do, although I do not advise doing this for children. As with any sugar recipe, this caramel gets extremely hot and you should always work cautiously to avoid burning yourself. Using the same pan from earlier, I melt 150 grams of cubed butter into my heavy saucepan over a medium-low heat. Once the butter is mostly melted, I add 150 grams of soft brown sugar and I allow this to melt. You want to continuously stir to avoid the sugar burning. You'll want to stir this until you no longer see large granules in the sugar. Once you get to this stage, you can add the condensed milk. Don't step away, you need to stir the caramel the whole time it's on the hob. Stir the caramel until the butter and sugar are fully incorporated. Then keep stirring the mixture on a medium-low heat until it begins to lightly boil. Once it reaches this boiling stage, you want to carefully stir it for 2 to 3 minutes to allow it to thicken up. Then immediately remove it from the heat and prepare to pour it over your cooled shortbreads. Be very careful here. Do not let this caramel touch your skin because you will get a nasty burn. I cannot overstate how hot this stuff is. Also, as tempting as it is, do not lick the spoon because the caramel will burn your mouth. I'm speaking from experience, it hurts. Carefully pour the caramel over your shortbread and use a spoon to push it to the edges of the dish so that it completely covers the biscuit layer. Then leave the caramel to cool at room temperature for about 30 minutes before putting it into the fridge. Okay, now the hard bit's done, we can move on to our final layer, the chocolate. You'll see here I've made myself a bain-marie, which is a heat-proof bowl over a pan of boiling water. This is my preferred method for melting chocolate. However, you can also melt chocolate in the microwave in 30-second increments and stirring, but just note it can burn quite easily using this method. A quick tip, leave your chocolate out at room temperature and then break it into pieces before you open the bag. This way you get small pieces with a lot less mess. So I pour my dark chocolate pieces into my heat-proof bowl and I add around 1 tablespoon of cooking oil. I use the oil to help make the chocolate more pliable after it cools. Cold chocolate can be quite brittle and may crack when you try to portion the shortbreads, which can ruin the presentation. Adding oil makes the chocolate less likely to crack later, but it's completely optional. Stir the chocolate over gentle heat using a spatula until it's completely melted and has a pourable consistency. You'll want to use dark chocolate here because obviously the caramel is very sweet, so using dark chocolate balances the flavour. Okay, now our chocolate is nice and melted, we can pour this onto our set caramel. We return this to the fridge to let it set before we can cut it up and serve. So let's see how it looks. There we have it, a brown butter Millionaire's shortbread. This recipe is a little time consuming, but you'll be very popular with your friends and family. I'm always so proud of myself when I make these, so definitely give them a try. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. See you next time on the Gig House Kitchen. Bye!